Hi everybody and welcome to another episode of Waggaz's Wings. In this episode we're going to take a look at IL-2 Stormvik Flying Circus with a focus on the SE5a. I've been having a play around with this plane and I've been struggling to find the best way to use it or different ways of using it. It feels, as we have right now, the way the plane is moduled, she's still very quick, got a great roll rate, good dive, but there's some issues around retaining energy. And perhaps I feel like I maybe can't get as many decent zooms up from my initial boom when I'm using her as an energy fighter. So I've been playing around at other ways of using her, and maybe using her more in a kind of aggressive dogfight, a la the Great Albert Ball. To reiterate here, I'm not suggesting that you don't still fly her as an energy fighter. Got a little clip here of me boom and zooming a Fokker D7 in a multiplayer server. I've just been looking at alternative ways of fighting with the SE5, particularly in situations where perhaps there's an opportunity to tangle with a bit of altitude, and I don't want to dive out quite yet. So I want to fly more like as if I was tangling in, say, a Camel or one of the Fokker planes that can turn quite well. There's a few things you have to learn and a few different manoeuvres that work well. It is still a very, very difficult way of flying, so I just want to show some of the manoeuvres and how they've come together as I've been experimenting. I would strongly suggest practicing a couple of these manoeuvres that I use here in quick mission. The first one here is the snap roll into the split S. So the split S, as you can see, is that way of changing direction through a sort of roll and dive. The snap roll works very well in the SE. There's plenty of other tutorials other than mine on how to snap roll. Generally, it's if you were to snap roll to the right, you want to quickly flick the your control stick down into the 5 o'clock position and kick full rudder in the same direction. And then it's up to you how long you want to hold that for, or whether you want to give the opposite inputs to recover. But it's a very good, quick way of changing direction. The next maneuver I want to look at is the flat scissors. This is a defensive maneuver, but it's a great way of turning the tables on your enemy. You'll see that as I'm changing direction back here, I like to dip the nose slightly. This is to pick up a bit more speed, so I've got a bit more authority on the controls. Also, in multiplayer, when I'm fighting, at the point where I change the direction of the turn, that's often when I'm forcing the overshoot, so it's when the enemy might have a shot. So again, dipping the nose there helps to get out of their firing line. The last thing I want us to look at here is recovering from a spin. This is quite easy to do in the SE5. So I'm putting us into the spin here. What you need to do, throttle back. You want to have aileron and elevator back in the direction that you're spinning. So here I'm pulling down to the 5 o'clock and then full opposite rudder. She'll recover very quickly, put the power back on and pull up. When you're doing some of those snap rolls, sometimes you may lose control, so you need to know how to spin recover. It's also a great way to use spin when you'll maybe need a bit of separation between you and the bandit when you're tangling up close. So when it's feeling a bit hot, a bit too close to you, you can create some separation, and you can zoom back up and sometimes try for a prop hang shot. The first online example I'm going to show you is me. I think we're about 3 kilometer altitude. Here I'm coming head on with a D7F. Using the SE5, I always like to try and get as many hits in as possible in the head-on. There's a couple of reasons why. Because of the lack of maneuverability of the SE compared to some of the other planes, some of the German planes, it's probably one of the longest firing opportunities you're going to have. I also like to use the stabilizer to trim the nose up, so then I'm continually placing forward pressure on the stick to counter that. I find that as a really good way of sort of keeping myself level. You see here, what I'm not doing is getting into a flat horizontal turn. What I'm doing is those snap rolls into the split S, snapping back and changing my direction quickly. You'll see occasionally I'm getting opportunities for some quick snapshots. Sometimes I make them, sometimes I don't. The difficult thing with the SE, as we now have it, is the RPMs. It doesn't recover those RPMs very, very fast, and the zoom is quite poor, and its energy retention is now quite poor from a low energy state. So you'll see once I've lost energy, I'm now entering more of a defensive style of flying. What I'm consistently doing is pulling into their turn. Burkle always talked about turning to face your enemy, so I'm always cutting in whilst losing height. So I'm diving with all of these manoeuvres in order to keep the speed up, which means that when I've got speed, I can manoeuvre. There's a risk that if the bandit isn't very good or isn't measuring perhaps their speed and the severity of the inputs, they might break their wings. So I've already damaged this guy's wings in my first pass and come up with a couple of those snapshots. And I get into quite an aggressive split S in a second. And you'll see that when he dives in to follow me, because of the damage to his wings shear. I guess you would call this a manoeuvre kill. You can't rely on this in all situations, so there you go, he pulls down and he's going too fast, too many Gs, and he snaps off his wings. Again, just showing that in external here. As you can see, I'm always pulling into them, so there is some horizontal turning element, so it's not all vertical, but a lot of it is vertical. We're continually diving. But every time I'm turning into them, I'm not giving them that shot, and also increasing the chances of giving myself the opportunity of a snapshot. Another thing I'm trying to do is I'm always thinking about where the bandit's going to be. So rather than maybe following them with lag pursuit or pure pursuit, what I'm doing is I'm thinking about where they're going to be and trying to place my nose at that point. So here I get a bit lucky. I was into a defensive position, but I managed to force the manoeuvre kill there. So this is where it gets interesting. I've seen a Halberstadt and a Fouts chasing a Spat. I take my chances with the Halberstadt, get behind him, shoot him up and set him on fire. Probably a little bit more dangerous there, sitting on his six than I should have been. Here we go, take some shots on the Fouts that's turned towards me. I think I actually missed there, but just didn't have quite enough lead. So again, I'm turning back towards them, and I'm always trying to keep my nose pointed into them and where they're going to be. So you'll see here, I've then scissor back, and then I get the opportunity for a snapshot and hit him. So there's a lot of scissoring here, keeping my nose pointed down, pulling into where they're going to be, some more snapshots. You'll see there we very nearly collided. This is one of the problems with this style of flying, is you get very close to each other. It's fast, it can easily result in a collision. I do my best to avoid them. Some people will pull for shots they shouldn't have. When I first started this, I did that. I try not to do that. Again, get an opportunity for some snapshots. Nose down, looking where he's going to be, and then pull up. As he's coming into me, I reverse. Again, looking to see where he is. So waiting for him to try and get his nose into my turn, and as he does, reverse. As he reverses, he overshoots, reverse again, trying to see where he's going to end up. So here I attempt the prop hang, I'm firing, I do hit him, but my aim just isn't good enough. That was a really good opportunity, I could have finished the fight there. So again, I forced them to overshoot, and I've created an opportunity. Now things are getting very interesting. We're down very, very low. Again, I'm not getting into a flat turn. He's doing quite well staying above me here. So some of the bandits, guys I come across, they're tempted to get down super low, not keep their energy. He's doing really, really well here, keeping his energy, and then booming and zooming on me. You see, I'm fighting really, really hard, always on the edge of the stall. That's another thing to practice, is just riding that plane right on the edge of its stall, knowing when the nose is going to drop out and how far you can push it. So he's circling above me now, and I'm just trying to work out what he's trying to do. As you can probably imagine, these fights can last some time, and it can be quite frustrating if someone dives in and either shoots up them or shoots up you. But that's the same with any kind of duel. So he's come down for an attack, and as he's just about to shoot me, I'm nose down. I've got just enough room to force him to miss the pilot. So there we go. Another little trick with the SE is the Lewis gun. You can tilt up. So I'm thinking, hang on a minute, he's staying above me, he doesn't want to come down, I'm going to force him to come down. So I've tilted up my Lewis gun, and I start to take shots, and using the tracers, I start getting hits into him. Really, really nice way to give them a scare. Did plenty of damage there. He zooms under me, he's a good pilot, so he doesn't cause a collision. So now things are getting very interesting. I tilt up the gun again, try and get some more shots. Think that I've got an opportunity of nosing up, don't quite. Tilt the gun again, still don't quite have that shot. He's coming down to build up his speed. I'm turning towards him, and you see I'm minimising the opportunity for him to come at me. you can imagine at this point I'm sweating buckets. So I'm trying to preserve my energy, and I get an opening to fire. I take the snapshot, and there we go, he's on fire. So I've forced those mistake after mistake after mistake, and eventually I've been rewarded. Admittedly, I've got lucky with him failing to wound my pilot, do significant damage to the engine, set me on fire. As I say, there's those jinking little manoeuvres you can do when you're reversing your turn. There's ways to minimise the amount that you're going to get hit, but there is a certain amount of luck to this, which is why it's more of a berserker way of fighting. So there we go, he was on fire, he was going to die anyway, so I've just put some rounds into the pilot, and I finished him off for a double kill. For some reason here as well, he explodes, having already been on fire, so maybe rubbing salt in that wound. Just a bit of fun of an external shot. So here is the beginning of the attack. So I see the Halberstadt. I've got 2 guys on my body, so I'm coming up behind him again. This isn't the safe way to take on a 2-seater, so again there's a certain amount of luck that plays here, but my aiming was good, so I was able to flame him in one go. So you can see a bit of a gratuitous kill cam shot. I think he actually had the Becker cannon fitted, which is partly why I survived that. His gunner managed to get a few shots off but missed, but the Becker jams quite often and doesn't have much ammo. If he'd had the 2 machine guns, then I might have been in more trouble. Here's the opening of the fight with the Fouts, and again you'll see I'm immediately putting my nose down to build up that speed. I'm turning into their turn. I'm not trying so hard to get inside their turn. I'm accepting that I'm probably not going to shoot them down the way that you may do by a lot of horizontal manoeuvring with, say, the Sopwith Camel versus one of these birds, or maybe taking the DR1 against a more poor turning aircraft like the Spad, for example. You'll see here I'm reversing the turns at the last minute, forcing overshoots and creating snapshot opportunities whilst minimising his chances of getting shots off on me. So if we go through again to the end of the fight here, where we got the killing shot, up to this point, at the very least, we fought them to a standstill while we're getting shots off at one another. Traditionally, when I see an SE5 try and dogfight in inverted commas with a bandit, they'll be pulling lots of horizontal turns, not nosing down, not split S-ing, and making themselves really easy meat, Fokker fodder for those German planes. I would advise, in addition to practicing the split S manoeuvre, the scissoring, I would also suggest practicing your gunnery. Before I go onto an online server, very often I like to just fire up a quick mission and just practice shooting down as many bandits as I can in as short a time as possible with as few bullets as possible. So really get a feel for that gunnery, particularly with some of those prop shots as well. Before you go out online and start taking on opponents. Generally, you don't want the first shots you fired that day and the first sense of your aim to be in a situation where you may only get 2 or 3 chances within a fight. I do think it's important here to show some failures. I think with some YouTube videos and YouTubers, they can give the impression that they're these incredible, indestructible pilots. I win at the moment quite a few of these fights. I guess I probably lose 1 in every 3 now, which is great. But this is a dangerous way of flying. Once you've lost your energy, you are in the defensive situation. All of the German aircraft, as we now have them, are far more manoeuvrable and can retain their energy much better than the SE. It's just how it's modelled by now. So you'll see here they get a snapshot on me and kills the pilot in one pass. Frustrating, but it is a hard way of flying, and you have to expect to die quite a lot. Right, so we've learned these manoeuvres, these tactics. We're ready to throw ourselves full Albert Ball into a big Furball with multiple enemy aircraft. Albert Ball, of course, was famous for taking his SE, going up against heavy odds, getting his plane riddled with bullets, and seemingly always coming back unscathed. Of course, like a lot of the World War I aces, one day he didn't come home, but it's thought that his death was caused by an accident where he became disorientated in the cloud rather than being shot down. So here I am, I've thrown myself in against multiple opponents. I've got a D7 on me, I've got a Fouts on me, and I'm using those same tactics. So I'm watching when they're coming at me, when they're getting into my turn, and then I'm reversing. I've got my nose down continually, and I'm looking for those snapshot opportunities. You'll have to excuse the footage here because I've started flying in VR now, so it isn't always the most easiest thing to capture. So again, getting my nose down, keeping the speed up, watching for when they might be turning into me, and then reversing those turns. I get an opportunity here on this D7. Not a killer blow, but enough to do some damage, possibly get a wound on the pilot. Again, looking where he's going, keeping my nose down, looking for an opportunity to nose up. Sometimes I manage the prop hang, sometimes not. Again, so I get my nose up, just about manage to get some shots before the stall. The SE5, as I've been saying, the energy retention on it means that nosing up isn't so easy. So he's made that mistake, and I've jumped on him, and I've really started to put some really good shots into him now. I suspect he's wounded from the way that he's kind of flapping about, so I'm able to close in on him and really shoot up the pilot. This guy is still going. At the same time, Mr. Fouts has seen an opportunity whilst I've been flying a bit more level to put some more shots into me. Again, luck. He could have easily have killed my pilot there, maybe set me on fire. So again, don't expect to come home from these kind of engagements. Bit of luck here. Mr. Fouts comes zooming down. The edge of his wing clips the D7 and finishes off the D7. I see an opportunity here to raise my Lewis gun. Tilt it up, get some shots. Again, really spook them out. Make them think you might be a Bristol or something. Speaking of Bristols, at this point a couple of Bristols join in. One's a human pilot, I think one was AI. I try to make sure that I'm not shoulder shooting the human pilot. The Fouts here is predominantly on the tail of the human pilot, and then there's an AI on his tail. So generally it is not good form to shoulder shoot or to shoot past a friendly aircraft because it's an AI. I've decided. As he's distracted, shooting up my buddy in the Bristol, he's not manoeuvring and pulling as hard a flat turn as he should be able to in that Fouts, which gives me an opening, a little bit of lead, a few bullets, and there we go, whoosh, he's on fire. But I'm not out of the woods yet. I'm still seeing shots whizzing around me. There's someone else around. You see that Bristol was taking a lot of damage there. So another D7. I've got a few hits into him as he's come past me. I suspect this guy might be a noob or a new pilot because he's not really throwing around that D7 as well as he could. He makes himself quite an easy target here. I try not to shoot the guy he's shooting at, so again he's got that kind of target tunnel vision, not really focusing on who's behind him. I reload the drum, probably not very realistic. I don't think any pilot would reload like that in that situation, probably a bit too dangerous. I suspect he's probably wounded from my pass on his 6 just now, so I fire up a few rounds in my Lewis and I kill the pilot. By this stage in the fight I've been firing off so many rounds, it's been so heated I've actually run out of ammunition with my Vickers gun. So here are the shots I'm putting in with my Lewis. See here, kill the pilot, spirals out of control and slams into the ground. So I finished that sortie with 3 confirmed kills and a lot of bullets in my aircraft. Again, if you fly like this a lot, you're not going to come home that often, but it is a lot of fun, and it just shows what you can do with an aircraft when you're imaginative in the way that you fly it. More often than not, the problem isn't the aircraft, it's the pilot. Thanks everyone very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the skies.